Yes, hello everyone. My name is Kakande Richard, and we are premiering the Allied Media Live. We are centering into our programs and also making sure that we keep you updated with the current affairs and drawing our analysis as the liberal world. I am so glad of the facilitation from our partners at Allied, as well as those abroad who have made these programs to be so vocal, philosophical, and very sounding. And of course, today, many of us have been questioning what has been the libertarian take, especially in Africa, on the American soil, whether we support the Republican agenda or the Democratic agenda. And of course, few people actually understand that we have a libertarian candidate into the race within the United States, and that is Chase Oliver. And for us, we still believe that the ultimate goal of every society is to make sure that they have a leader, a frontliner of policies that support human flourishing. Lately, we've had a lot of socialist and communist ideas in the US in the name of the welfare principle. We do not completely denounce the welfare principle, but we think it should be the last stage upon which citizens should be bailed out. We think that we must give room for markets to function freely. We must give room for an open border trade. We must give room for the critical understanding of an individual within a society, and we must make sure that we define an individual within the personates of how they are without drawing the bigger picture of the society. So that's what we think. We decipher morality, we decipher human interaction to who is an individual and what makes them happy. So that's it. And of course, we agree on the ethical code and standards that people in the US should be following. So we've had a lot of tax increase lately in the US, the cost of living going up, if you look at the figures, and we've also seen a number of things that we haven't seen before. It's surprising, the last two terms, actually the term that is being finished by Joe Biden and the one that Trump had just concluded. It's amazing for the first time, I think, on the world stage to have dolls of figures coming into politics. And I think it's high time that the American people really do away with the two-party system. The conservative nature of politics really builds dictators. And this has always stolen the American people from the ability to actually analyze their own policies, to actually own their liberties. You find that the middle class has always been influential for as long as it can support either the Republicans or the Democrats, whichever way that they take. I think it's time for them to have a more freer world than their founding fathers, and we think that Chess has the capacity to do that. You see, it's not about which figure comes on the front line. It's about which policy they carry. For us, from the liberal movement, we don't look at who owns the biggest mansions, who is more old in age, who is what. That's not what we look at. Yes, we've had these debates locally here, and of course, people are thinking that Kamala Harris, because of color, because of what, and that's not what the liberal movement is all about. Our movement believes that whoever goes and qualifies to be a US president, or to be nominated as a US presidential candidate, has any mandate to carry on. And we think that we have to look at their programs and policy and how they approach life. Good enough, many of the candidates that have stood up for the US presidency have always had a CV. So I don't think that Harris has any much to do, because she's VP. What hasn't she done that she wants to do as she comes to power. I don't think that, and I put the same question to Trump, that look, this is a gentleman who spent 4 years in the White House. Yes, we know there are new developments that have come up within the world, but what did he do that he wants to do? That's the point. So I think that it's time that the world draws away from the cynical and the sick logic of the two-party system. It's time to have an inclusive society. And of course, the plunder that we have in the US is also alarming. You know, this is it's a time. It comes at a time where the Americans are living like Africans. Where on earth did we have such a system where, you know, I saw the arguments of Kennedy and the number of signatures he has to obtain so that he can qualify for nomination and for presidency. And I think this is madness. We must give leverage for people who have got talent to lead others to come on board. Let the electorates decide. As it has been our slogan, that let the market decide. I think it's time that we give a leveled platform for the people. Just like it is in Uganda, where we have the commercialization of politics. You know, I saw some time back in our local newspapers, you need about 2 trillion Ugandan shillings to stand against the president of Uganda. I don't think that we can measure leadership and what people can offer on the table if we commercialize what leadership is all about. And I think this is the same madness that we are seeing even in countries where people think that democracy originated. But we still come to terms with the reality and think that it's time that the US, maybe in a broader perspective, look at an individual before a party or before any association or any identity. The politics of identity practiced in Africa, of tribalism, of religion, of color, I think that madness should be stopping. It should be having some limits. It's time that we have global thinkers raise a generation of another 21st enlightenment by doing away with what we identify ourselves as in terms of what we can deliver. So it has been our ambition, and it is still our push that maybe for the first time the Americans should look at having the person who stands from the philosophy, the ideology, and from the practice and the reality of what a freer society means. So that, of course, brings us to other arguments, like you see. And I think the two-party system has led to a lot of mistakes, as you've seen them. You've seen the wars in Guatemala. You've seen the wars that America has caused all over the world, in Libya. You've seen their companies in most of the mining countries. And we think that this is potentially because these are the people who are funding these kinds of candidates. So liberty and of course, the liberal movement would bring an approach that brings a consensus to all of us. This should be something, this should be an enlightenment that is going to start with chess and is going to spread to the rest of the world. I think for the first time we shall build a uni-movement, a uni-ideological movement, because this is what liberty is all about. For us, we don't have limitations as to identities. What we have is who brings a programmatic program that can strive and pull majority of us out of poverty, but also give us a more freer society. Who is willing to protect what we've worked for, what we've earned genuinely, and who is going to give us justice wherever we need it? Who is going to protect the integrity and the borders of our countries against aggression? That's what we look at in liberty. Who is going to make sure that everyone can produce, everyone can exchange value for money, for a profit? And that's what we look at as the liberal movement. And this, of course, crosses to the debt burden that the US has, but also to stop poking nose where it's unnecessary. You see this t-shirt, the theme that taxation is theft. This is one of the global ideas that started from the US. And yes, we believe so, as the liberal movement, we believe so. Why do we believe so? If the US taxpayer does not agree for their tax to be used to start a war, then why should their tax be used to that? Who brings such leaders who are so much identical of their political affiliation to books in a society and a state that we think has grown? I think this rating of what we've been seeing and hearing of the US, the glory, of course you can see, things speaks for themselves. You can see the growth of China, you can see the growth of India, you can see a number of countries coming on board. They don't want to be superpowers, but they are building their own share and portion of the world simply because the US has skipped the fundamental reason as to why it became the US. So you can see the levels of aggression, Russia, Ukraine, and you can also see what is happening in Israel. And you see, a taxpayer in the US still suffers the burden of paying for wars where he has no business. It's unimaginable. As well as we have people on the streets in Africa, we have people on the streets in the US. We have people in Africa or the rest of the world where people have made money genuinely and they are owning bigger companies, especially in India, and people in the US have nothing to see for. So I think it's time that we change the narrative. It's time that we give a try and we give a chance to the libertarian movement and the Liberty Party to deliver the US to where it's supposed to be by now. And this is not only for the US, but for the rest of us, for the safety and for the growth of each and every one of us. Because libertarians at least have tested one thing, the bit of ethics and integrity in whatever they do, because they put individualism first before anything else. Yeah, and I think in our affairs, I also wanted to talk about the 2024 education bill in Uganda. The liberal point of view is that we at all costs want to kick the government in every sector. We think there has been the limitation and the barriers to human flourishing in all sectors. And if you look at the bill in Uganda, the minister just recently the parliament made the first reading of the bill that is requiring for all teachers in Uganda to be degree holders. Of course, no one wants to go to a class or send their children to a class where the person in front of your children is half-baked. But the Ugandan system, like we've always said, has always been a contrast of the market. We are saying, will the market offer the money value of degree holders in classes? Has the government looked at that? And two, is it the priority that the country should be looking at? You know, the problem with the tax system is that the government will always bring something because they think they have capacity to fund it, even if they have no sustainability. And that has always been the problem. And that's where our money has always been going. Because if you look at it from all angles, the private sector in Uganda has been the biggest supporter of the education system. And why? Because the government cannot maintain its own school to give the best what we expect of our students. If you look at the quality being produced by the universal secondary education or the universal primary education, many of them are street dwellers. This is maybe sort of their degree. This is what they earn. A few of them have come out, and we can argue that has been on maybe luck or situations have changed and have been able to produce something. So we think that it's time for government to, let the industry decide the quality of the material that they need. Let the industry decide the levels of qualification for their teachers. I've seen secondary schools that require a master's for you to be able to teach. And I've seen universities where we have degree holders teaching. So let the market decide. Let the parent take their child where they feel they are capable and they're safe. So that in the eventuality of anything, no one blames the other. The qualification bit is not a problem. The problem is the system that is already rotten, that cannot accommodate anything that is sounding. If you look at the tax base in Uganda, it's funny. Our unemployment rate has always been skyrocketing, and it's becoming worse because we have a number of companies that have closed lately, and the reason of their closing is pertinent and is central to the unfair, exploitative tax regime. And we don't have a way of monitoring what is happening in the country. Why? Because the voices are closed. Just yesterday, we saw a decision of court where the commissioners who gave themselves over 500 millions, 400 millions, court said that it was legal. You see, the point is, even if it is legal, even if, because the argument was that, you see, these commissioners, they gave themselves this money, and it is because it was passed in the budget and agreed by every member of parliament, and that's why the money was released. The question is, does that make it right? Where does a parliament get the authority, the moral authority, the audacity to, give themselves money? How does that come into play? We are talking of a country which is having about 45 million people, and they're having, every village has a constituency. We are coming to a situation where every person in Uganda will be living in their own constituency. If the numbers don't stop where they are, we're having this exorbitant exploitation of the taxpayers' money going on government agencies. You find a ministry having about 4 agencies doing the same thing, and now you'll need to have a member of parliament, you need to have a mayor, you need to have a presidential representative in every constituency or every district. And you see, this is just a repetition of what one agency is supposed to be doing. So, and we are living in a country where 10 trillion Ugandan shillings is being used, is being put on corruption every time and then. So, resource management and the way taxpayers' money is being used and being put to waste has been one of the biggest drawbacks that we can change the regime. And it's not changing because the song has been for long, and now it has become a disease, and every Ugandan is part of the problem. And I think that when people advocate for